Hey guys, if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for links to some great online retailers. There's also individual links for knives that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review slash knife overview to share with you guys. These are the Kizer Vanguard Sheepdog knives in Micarta and CTS BD1 in steel. Due to a little bit of a mix-up on my end, I ended up with two of these from two generous viewers. Well, they loaned them to me. Tim and Jason. Thank you so much, guys, for loaning these guys out. I really only needed one, but I'm kind of happy that I have two examples here because we have two different colors of micarta, and then we have a DLC blade and then a stonewashed blade, and it's really cool to experience both. I will be linking these guys right down in the description. There are versions of this that are still available in different colors of micarta, DLC or non-DLC, and then they actually have a mini one available too. So I'll be linking all of that stuff right down at the top of the description, as well as Kizer knives in general, so you can check all of that stuff out. Thanks so much to my generous patrons who are supporting the channel right now. If you are enjoying the daily knife content on this channel and you'd like to support me, you can find my link for Patreon down in the description. Get your hands on some stickers and other cool stuff. And please follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. So there are three sizes of this knife, actually. There's also an XL version, which you probably will be able to find by clicking on that link. And it's a little bit more expensive. I've owned the XL Sheepdog, and I've owned the Mini Sheepdog as well, and I think they're all super cool. This is probably the coolest knife in the Kizer lineup. There's a couple of other ones in there, but this is one of the coolest knives in the Kizer lineup. Certainly one of the most popular. But this is the medium-sized one, and you know, honestly, it's kind of a Goldilocks situation for me. The XL is monstrous. It's freaking monstrous. The little one is, it's okay. This one's just about perfect. So I'm pretty excited about that. I'm going to use this one to go through the size comparison stuff, and then we will go through and talk about that other one here in a sec. Overall length of the Kizer Vanguard Sheepdog and micarta coming in at 7.75 inches overall. Blade length, in places you can measure it 3.5. It's probably more like 3.4. And then your cutting edge is just a hair over 3 inches, thanks to this area here and that sharpening choil. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons up against the Ontario Rat Model 1. Rat 1 is coming in at 8.6 inches overall. How about up against the Spyderco PM2? Spyderco PM2 coming in at 8.3 inches overall. How about up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case the Ritter Hogue? Ritter Hogue coming in at 8 inches overall. How about up against the Para 3? Spyderco Para 3 coming in at 7.25 inches overall. And last but not least, the Benchmade Mini Griptilian. Mini Griptilian coming in at 6.75 inches overall. How's the action on this guy? The action's pretty good. It's about what I expect from Kizer. To be honest with you, the DLC one is close to the exact same feeling, but this one's just a little bit smoother. I have to imagine that has a little bit to do with the finish. But for those of you like, oh no, I wanted the DLC one, but I wanted the action to be good. Fear not, it probably just takes a little bit longer to break in. The reason that I'm saying that is because I've handled many knives of the same model with different finishes. Sometimes the finish has to do with the initial action. For example, Rick Hinderer knives, upwards of $400, it's almost exactly the same thing. The more high polished finishes, and I understand they do try to polish that track, that area right there. Sometimes, for whatever reason, I've found that the DLC blades, even when they do try to polish that area up, sometimes it just takes a little bit longer. This does not feel bad at all. You can see here's about what we're working with, right? And then this guy is the same thing, but it just takes a little bit less encouragement. Both of them have very snappy actions, right? It's very easy to disengage the liner lock and put the blade away. The flipper tab is pretty big. In fact, I mean, you could say it's kind of excessively big. I talked about that when I reviewed the large one. It's funny that the medium-sized one is the only one that I have not reviewed. In any case, the detent's great, nice and clicky. I'll give you guys an example here of the detent. Click, like that, and then it snaps into place. Very satisfying. And obviously, you know, the main drawing point to this blade is this big sheep's foot. Almost, I mean, it looks like a cleaver to me, right? But we're going to call it a sheep's foot because of the whole sheepdog thing, and I think technically it is classified as a sheep's foot blade. Anyways, the action's great. I don't have a problem with the action at all. You can flip that thing all day, no problem. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check, get out my tools here. You can check out my tools down in the description. They are very inexpensive and very recommendable. There's a few options down there. The pivot is a T8. I'm 100% certain, yeah. And then oh, wait a sec. The body screws are also T8. That's awesome. I was like convinced. Kizer likes to use T6, and so I was convinced that those were going to be T6. They're not. Minimal hardware, 2 screws on each side, couple of standoffs, right? Pocket clip screws are going to be T6, that's fine. Excuse me, but the pivot and the body screws are T8. That's great. I've got no problem with that whatsoever. Let's go ahead and do carry profile, so thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. The Sheepdog is ever so slightly thicker, but we do have slight contouring on these scales, or at least very... Is it actually flat up top? Boy, the chamfering here, the transition from the chamfering to, I guess, what's the flat area on top is so subtle. It really feels like contouring, but in any case, it does at least give the illusion of a rounded handle, which is perfectly welcome in a situation where it is ever so slightly thicker than the Para 3. Ultimately, that's a long-winded way of saying it is not thick. Let's go ahead and do carry profile length and height up against 2 knives that have awkward carry profiles that nobody ever complains about, the PM2 and Para 3. This is a tall boy, for sure. Lengthwise, you're looking at a handle length that's roughly the same as the Para 3, maybe a little bit longer. Definitely shorter than the PM2, but height-wise, maximum height, both in this area right here and then the other tall point, I think it's actually taller. Honestly, it's about the same right here, but right here, tallest point, yeah, it's definitely taller than the PM2 and Para 3. So this is going to be wide, you know, which is going to be a problem for people who do carry things other than a knife in their designated knife pocket, right? If you carry a lot of stuff, you have to carry stuff in that knife pocket alongside the knife, it's going to be a problem. For people who don't carry, you know, other stuff in that pocket, it's not going to be a problem. I guess also people who have really tiny pockets, right? If you like tiny pockets, then yeah, definitely not. Let's go ahead and do a measurement of the blade stock thickness here. I'm going to guess that's about 125 thousandths. I don't think it's very thick. I remember that even the XL one wasn't crazy thick. 115 thousandths, even thinner than that, right? Let's go ahead and take a look at the inside. So what we're looking at here for materials are, by the way, you can pick up my flashlight in the description, micarta, and then I believe we have milling on the line. Yeah, the liners on the inside are milled out, at least on one side. On this side, it doesn't appear to have any milling, but at least on one side it's milled. Nothing here is excessive except for the height of the blade. That's where the most weight is going to come from, is just the overall, just the total amount of steel on this thing, right? So, wait, we done scale? The weight here, let's make sure I got that all the way on the scale. 4.41 ounces. Do the other one just in case. Oh, why does this guy weigh more? Really? 4.52? 4.41, okay. The DLC one weighs 1/10 of an ounce more. Whatever. Not bad. It's over that 4 ounce mark. It's over the ounce and inch mark. So do with that information what you will. This is not a knife that I consider to be too heavy to carry personally, but I can understand why some people might consider it to be a bit tall or a bit wide. That's probably going to be the main, that would be the most understandable reservation from my perspective that people might have. But it's still within a normal weight and length range for a lot of people. It is over the legal limit for some people, right? So there are still a lot of people who can enjoy this, and I think will be able to adapt to it. This is a knife that's very easy to adapt to despite the height of the blade, and I'm going to attribute that to essentially the profile of it when it's completely folded up is really kind of impressive, right? Let's go ahead and talk about the anatomy here. I love this knife. Was made for micarta. Like right now, micarta is a big thing, right? Everything, they put, you know, micarta on it, and all of a sudden it's just really, really cool. These shades of very vintage looking micarta, we have I believe this is the OD green, and this is like the tan, right? And then they've got like a dark gray or a black micarta, and then you can get the combination, you know, you can get a DLC blade or you can get a satin finish blade. They also have like kind of a lighter, like a coyote, or, you know, maybe it's just more of maybe a natural, like light brown, right? I think there's 4 different shades of micarta that you can get, perhaps maybe even 5. But you can kind of combine it with it. All of the different shades of micarta actually look great, both with the tumbled blade and with the DLC blade. I don't think they do a satin. If they do, okay, great. But honestly, I'm really happy with Kizer's tumbled finish. I think this looks great. This would be one of my #1 picks right here. I really like this one. But I also really like the DLC. All of this just looks great. The knife just looks incredibly good in any configuration that you could pick up. And that makes me really happy. Like I was saying before, let's give this guy some time on the camera. The chamfering here is really nice. I'm actually really happy that they did not mill the lines all the way through. I remember back when this knife was the first production version of this, you know, that was in titanium, and it was all tie, and they milled the holes all the way through. I'm not always the biggest fan of being able to see through the scales. I don't know why. I'm really glad that they just didn't do it on this guy. I think it looks better. Edge is perfectly rounded off. Ergonomically, this thing is an absolute dream. I wear an XL glove. I can absolutely get a full 4-finger purchase on this guy. So if your hands are the same size as mine or smaller, you're going to be really comfortable. If your hands are bigger, right, like way bigger than mine, then you're probably going to want to go with the XL if you really, really like the profile of this knife. So that's great. Hardware positioning looks great. It's nice and simple, doesn't take away from anything. Flipper tab is basically a gigantic rectangle. It is pretty big, it sticks out pretty far, but you're able to get a lot of leverage on it to do either the light switch or, if you want to, the push button. Like I said, it is comfortable. The edges are very nicely knocked down, despite looking a little bit sharp, honestly. They're really comfortable. I mean, I don't know how to explain that. It's the same way. This guy's even more knocked down because of the tumbled finish. Let's go ahead and get these blades out. The blade is definitely the highlight of this design. Absolutely. It's such a good looking blade. Especially, I love that they cut that little notch out right there. It says Kizer on the front, BD1N, right? And then over here, we have the little Sheepdog Knives badge, which, by the way, this is a collaboration with Sheepdog Knives, the original custom Sheepdog. There's what this is production version. Not bad, honestly, for Kizer. Usually there's a bunch of completely unnecessary stuff on there, but the way that they did this, it says CO1C in a font that doesn't bother me. That rhymed. And then 173, which, whatever that means. I imagine these are all numbered. Are they? Yeah, these are probably all numbered because it's probably a limited thing. I hope they keep doing them because they sure seem to be popular. Really looks good. The blade is incredibly handsome all the way around. We have a flat that runs out about 95% the length of the blade, and it drops down to a super nice edge. Oh, I actually spent about an hour one day with my XL Sheepdog just breaking down cardboard boxes, and oh my gosh, this thing was a dream to use for that. It was, I mean, the big one and this medium-sized one, they're going to feel about the same. I imagine the smaller one's going to, maybe it's thinner on the spine, and so it'll be about the same. I'm gonna guess no matter what size of this you get, they're probably all gonna be relatively similar behind the edge. Really good. Oh man, I just love the geometry of this blade. It's so good. A lot of people, I think, might be, you know, wanting to know, is this a good like food prep sort of kitchen? I don't know. That flipper tab's kind of tall, so the blade doesn't actually like, you want that blade to lay flat, as far as I understand. You know, or at least be able to contact all parts of the blade when you lay it down like this, so you can do, you know, your chopping or whatever. I'm not a food prep kitchen master or anything, but the blade doesn't actually contact the surface, laying it flat like this until about right here, which, I don't know, I guess it depends on what you're doing, right? And if you're cutting at the edge of the table, you know, then maybe so. Maybe it'll work for that. I don't think it would be bad for that, but then again, you know, with that logic, a lot of knives wouldn't be bad, right? But for regular cutting tests, I think it's going to be great. I think there's a substantial amount of material out here considering how tall the blade is, so it really doesn't need a lot of excess thickness. The edges on this guy are incredibly nicely knocked down thanks to that tumbling. On this guy, It's about the same. It's a little bit less, but it's not sharp enough to actually shave my fingernails. That really the only sharp part of the knife is the edge, as it should be, and the edge is great on both of them. I mean, the consistency here is awesome. They look exactly the same. There's no wonkiness or anything like that. Appreciate that. That's about what I expect from Kizer, right? But they look nice, especially considering the price point, which I'm really happy with. We'll get to that here in a second. Moving down, like I said, hardware's in a good place. You got a couple of nice looking standoffs on this guy. It's black, right? If you go with the DLC, then you're going to get DLC hardware. The pocket clip, I like the pocket clip a lot. I really do. It's not rising a lot, but it's still a continuous ramp, which means it's going to not fight your pants as much as a clip like this that has a bill and comes straight forward, right? If you've got pocket seams that are thicker than the distance from the scale to the tip of the clip, it should rise to meet it, which is great. Got a couple of holes right here. It looks like this is, at the moment, right-hand tip-up carry only. I'm right-handed and I prefer to carry my knives tip-up, so that works for me, but people who are left-handed, unfortunately, there's no option for you here, at least as far as I'm aware. I honestly don't know if they make a left-handed version of this or not. If they do, it'll be listed, you know, it'll be populated in that link that I've got down there. But the knife carries deep enough. Actually, it's interesting because of where this pocket clip is. The only thing that you're going to see hanging out of your pants is this. The rest of this blade is completely and totally hidden, which is something that I touched on when I reviewed the larger, the XL one. I thought it was incredible that so little of the knife actually shows sticking out of your pocket. You're definitely going to be aware that there's a wide object in there. But as far as like what it looks like from the outside, I guess for people who are concerned with that, no, you're really just seeing this. That's really all you're gonna see. So I think that's nice. On this guy, I kind of like the clip and the polishing. I don't know. I like the contrast between the micarta and the reflective polished hardware and the reflective blade. Right. I think it looks really, really nice. But again, I like this guy too. This is the finish on the pocket clip almost looks a little bit. I don't know, it looks exactly the same as the blade, so I imagine the wear on the pocket clip and the blade will be about the same over time. I think it'll look good considering the micarta already gives it a vintage look, like it's already been around for a while. So whatever finish you go with, whether it's tumbled or it's DLC, I think the knife is just one of these knives that it really just more character is added to it the more that you use it, both, you know, in terms of the pocket clip wear and the blade wear. The entire thing is just going to continue to look really, really good. We have the non-show side pivot over here. I'm going to guess these are captive. I did make a small adjustment on this one just to kind of see, and the pivot was adjustable, no issues whatsoever, and that made me happy, so that's fine. These are both liner locks, steel liner locks. You can see here this one's engaging at, I'm going to call that 45% or so, and what's this one engaging at? Pretty much exactly the same place. The centering on these guys is just about perfect. I bet I could give that guy a little bit of a turn and it'll come back completely center. Let's go ahead and do that. It's always fun when I have this opportunity on camera. Just because people get bent out of shape about centering, and it's pretty common for knives to come slightly off center if the do we have that now? Oh, it's pretty close. But so for anybody who doesn't know, there is a trick with center. Yeah, the pivot is definitely not turning. That's definitely a captive pivot. Wonder if I give that a little bit more of a crank. It's wanting to come back, it's wanting to creep back ever so slightly, but essentially the trick is here, if this thing is off center, don't fret. You want to loosen this guy, loosen these two screws, take a piece of paper, looks about like this, and then you're going to take that piece of paper and you're going to wedge it right here. You're going to wedge that blade all the way over until it's actually touching the other side of the scale. Right? Then you're going to crank the pivot down all the way, completely and totally tight. After you crank that down, you're going to crank these two screws down, completely tight. Don't over tighten these, just get them nice and snug, right? At this point, when you take the piece of paper out, the blade should literally be way over here. Then you're going to slowly loosen this pivot, get the action back to normal, and the blade should completely center up, and you're going to have exactly the action that you would expect. That will work about 99% of the time. So if yours looks like this, not that big of a deal, right? These are both technically used, so I'm not going to judge them too hard, though I hope that they generally come centered from the factory. This guy honestly is a little bit over too. I wonder if I can do that here real quick just to demonstrate. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this on camera, actually. I want to prove that this is something that you can do. So I've got a video that explains this completely. And I think you guys, might enjoy checking that out. So you can see what I did there. I just loosened it up just a bit. We're going to take this piece of paper here, and we're just going to wedge that blade over completely. In fact, I'm actually going to keep that folded, and we're going to, you got to get kind of exactly the right thickness of paper. Now we're going to take this pivot here, and we're going to get that cranked down. Not so far to where we're risking actually damaging anything, but we're definitely going to get it tight. Now we're going to get these body screws tight again. And again, be careful. If you have a shallow head, you don't want to strip anything out. And certainly I don't want to strip anything out considering this is somebody else's knife. I'm going to keep going. Just make sure it's snug. Not going to over tighten anything, right? Now hopefully, I'm going to take this out. Oh, see? We're actually back on center now. So ideally, we take this pivot and just back it out just a little bit. Are we about there? Oh, yeah. Oh, we're just about spot on. Just about spot on. But this is definitely better than it was. Is it? Are we back? We're almost dead on center. I probably could do that again. Honestly, I probably could give that pivot just a little bit more of a crank and get it just about perfectly on and keep that. The action's still good. I wonder if I could keep going. This isn't a normal part of my review. I just wanted to prove that these little tricks can be super beneficial. Is the action still good? Yeah, the action's still good. How are we on centering now? It's almost perfect. So you can do that with your knives. Absolutely. And it'll bring them back to center. So probably, I don't want to waste too much additional time in the review to do that. But just to prove that the centering can be fixed fairly easily. Yeah, there you go. So anyways, so what are my thoughts on these? I think these are freaking awesome knives. I think they're really, really cool. CTS BD1N. This is essentially CTS BD1 with, I believe, added nitrogen, a little teeny tiny bit of added vanadium. It is a high carbon and high chromium stainless steel. Very fine grain structure, not a powder form steel, but very fine for an ingot form steel. Should be very easy to sharpen up. It is definitely stainless. And it'll hold an edge a little bit longer than CTS BD1. It was definitely meant as an improvement over CTS BD1, and I think reports are that it is exactly that. Do I think it's appropriate in this price range? Absolutely. I have no problem with that steel whatsoever, and you'll find that most people don't. What do these come in at? They're about 90 bucks for the medium-sized one. I think they're like 80 to 85 for the mini. Do I think that's a good price? 100% I think that's a good price. These knives are not made in the United States. They are made in China. Kizer does collaborate with a lot of, American knife makers and a lot of knife makers from all over the place. So whatever your feelings are about that, that's fine. If you don't like it, don't buy it. If you do like it, well, then it's available for you to buy. I think it's absolutely worth the money. If yours comes off center, I mean, that's a bummer. If they come from the factory off center, then that's a bummer. Again, I don't want to judge it too hard because this was not sent by the factory, by the manufacturer Kizer. It was sent by two separate viewers who may have been using and carrying these things and flipping them over and over again. Perhaps they even made their own adjustments. I don't know. But they can be brought back to center just like any knife with a similar construction. That's another reason why I like minimal hardware, by the way, because it's very easy to adjust. So anyways, little nitpicks that I have, the blade's definitely tall. That creates for a wide carry experience. But the weight and the length is not something that you can't adapt to. What else? What else can I honestly complain about here? I don't know. The flipper tab is pretty obtrusive. It's pretty large, right? I don't think the flipper tab really needs to be that big. I think it would have been awesome to have a much lower profile flipper tab and almost turn this area into a choil, right? I mean, like if you just left basically this, right? And then what would we have left there? Shorter, right? A much shorter flipper tab. I honestly, the detent's good enough that it really doesn't need that much. And then, yeah, you'd have maybe something like that sticking out. Maybe something a little bit. Right, I don't think it needed that much initially. But, the look of this is really, really good. Maybe that would have taken away from the look of it. Any nitpicks that I can throw at this are going to be pretty minor. These are recommendable knives for sure. I can't quite call them budget knives. It's approaching that $100 mark, but I can't put them in the cheap knives that I like category because I wouldn't consider these cheap, but I certainly do consider them of good value and more affordable than a lot of the knives that I show on this channel. They are certainly going to be going in my most recommended knives playlist, so I urge you guys to check them out. Once again, you can find these knives in the link right down in the description of this video, right at the top. Check these out. Check out Kizer knives in general. I'll link all of that stuff. Again, guys, be sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. That's going to be pretty much it for today's video. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.